Welcome to Concrete Conversations, the Indian real estate podcast. I am Akshay.
And I'm Yash, and we're the hosts of the show. Over the last 20 years, the landscape of Indian real estate has changed completely, especially in the residential sector. As developers look to find novel ways to add value to their projects and stand out in a competitive market, we are seeing a greater emphasis on community, lifestyle, and services.
Our guest today brings to the table 20 years of development experience across multiple markets and market segments. The Joint Managing Director at Ashiana Housing Limited, Mr. Ankur Gupta. Having completed his Masters in Real Estate from New York University, Ankur brought his work experience from the US to his family business.
Ashiana Housing Limited has been a stalwart name in many Indian markets, having gone public in 1992. They have been pioneers in the residential space as the first to introduce senior living projects in India and have brought innovations in the form of new offerings like kid-centric homes and comfort homes.
So join us as Mr. Gupta shares his wisdom and experiences about the ever-evolving Indian real estate market. So, Ankur, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Concrete Conversations. How are you feeling? How's your day going so far?
Oh, it's been an interesting day and an interesting week, actually. Quite busy.
That I hope good busy.
Yeah, actually very good busy. Excited about the coming year, and the whole month has been gone planning the year out. So it's been a lot of fun doing that.
Nice. And speaking about plans and career trajectories or business plans, we thought we could start by just getting a sense of your career and how you ended up in real estate, and where the journey to where you are today.
Mine is a very good old story of family business. My father started Ashiana, and I think he instilled it in all three brothers as a kid that we'll come back and join the family business. It was a very funny situation that I also did my master's in real estate from New York University. So it was even education was kind of built into that mindset that I'll get into real estate back. And
Right.
it's been before I joined Ashiana, I kind of one of the things my father wanted me to do was take a learning from a little bigger companies.
Mm.
I worked in Macy's for a few months. I worked in a company called Leggett and Platt, basically doing odd jobs, but to just see how the functioning is, so that it helps when you're scaling up. You understand how scaled up companies work. So while working with large companies, I also got an opportunity to work with a startup where we were four people who basically doing imports and exports of fruit juice concentrates. There, the learning was very different, where we were, I was doing sales, accounts, logistics, purchase. So it was a well-rounded kind of a learning. And I think the combination of the learning kind of gave me a good launch pad to enter Ashiana. And I guess in 2002, I entered Ashiana, and it was just a dream run. I think from 2002 to 2008, in real estate, you could be doing anything and you could be doing right. So I was lucky in a situation where I entered the market when it was hot. But I learned certain disciplines in the beginning that, just growth for the sake of growth is not a good thing. And remember to do great work. That's what joy of work is. And making sure that we are very disciplined from a financial position and financial perspective. And I heard this statement earlier on in my life, is that most companies die of indigestion than starvation.
Right.
So to be disciplined when there was growth was one of the biggest, I think, learning I had. And we did not do any of those mistakes. Otherwise, lots of the real estate companies after the 2008 era started going into a lot of problems. So I felt great that we built a good company. We had a dream run. We did go through trouble from 2014 to 2018, 19 kind of a situation where our sales did drop, and that was another learning because we were trying to figure out our consumers better, our sales processes better, our product better. So those were all things which made me learn a lot. And now again, we are ready for a little bit of a dream run, according to me. So we're excited about the next few years.
Nice. That sounds interesting, and I'm sure we are also keen to see where you go with this new dream run you had in mind. But looking historically for a second, we thought we could ask you, since you've had sort of a family base in real estate. How have you seen the perception of real estate professionals change over the years? I mean, you yourself went and did a professional degree, so I wanted to get a sense of how you've seen the perception evolve.
So in the initial stages when the real estate market was actually good, was a good situation from a professional perspective also, because lots of people were getting a lot of growth. But when the markets turned and lots of job losses and people were not getting paid, created a low perception of real estate.
Right.
The perception of real estate has been like the perception of the market of real estate, not like other products and other industries. Luckily for us, about 60% of our hires are all from referrals.
Right.
Okay. But I hear our employees sell the fact that it's not just another real estate company, it's different. You will get your salary, just not,
Right.
you'll not just get your salary, you'll get your salary on the first of every month. There is a lot of learning, there is growth, and that sales pitch has to keep going regularly. For us, that's a great thing, but from a long term perspective, I think we need to bring a better name for the real estate industry so better professionals come in and join us.
Right. And I wanted to ask you, moving deeper into this theme rather, do you feel that as real estate has become more professional and more organized, and now that we've actually seen the presence of real estate in financial markets also increase with stuff like REITs and InvITs coming in, do you think that the development mindset or the goals of developers have also started to change because of this?
Yes, definitely, and there is you can definitely see a difference of quality of people who've entered the market, and the financial REITs, more organized players are making a difference and will continue making a difference. But my belief is worldwide, for some reason, it's still it's not considered a industry which is very exciting for a lot of people to work for. So where I find it to be getting better, but I think there is a long way to go.
Right, and following up to that, since Yash was speaking about development mindset, wanted to ask you very specifically about a model we've seen come more and more into focus in commercial real estate, which is the buy, build, and lease model. In more mature markets, of course, you see the same model even there in residential real estate. Do you think we're still ways away from seeing buy, build, and lease in residential real estate in India, or you think that model is in the works as we speak?
Till the time the rental yields in India don't catch up to cost of capital,
Right. Right.
I see this market not going the REIT way. Okay.
Right.
So I still find that as a large gap in the market, and I'm not seeing that changing anytime soon. But there are definitely housing which are value added, like co-living, student housing, senior living, assisted living, where the rental yield starts making sense. And definitely those areas are already showing great signs, and I think has great opportunity in the future.
And since you mentioned all these different kind of specialized newer verticals where potentially that there could be that yield and cost of capital match up, we know that you operate in a bunch of different markets as well, apart from being in different verticals. So I wanted to ask you, as a developer, when you go to these different markets, what's the approach in selecting a new market to operate in? Are there any criteria? Is there any benchmark that the market has to meet?
So funnily, when we started, it was more gut. My father started Bhiwadi, a friend of him. Sorry, he started in Patna, and a friend of him came down and said, "Hey, Jamshedpur looks like a great market, and we need a good developer there. Why don't you come in?" And he kind of started there. Then in Bhiwadi, it was like my chacha had a family business there. He went there and saw the lack of housing, and saw an opportunity there and bought it.
Right.
but mo- but now more and more as we grow in size, we are doing a lot of demographic studies. I think demographic, per capita, general growth in the market, real estate trends, competitive market scenarios are playing a very important role in these markets. And now we are becoming more and more choosy and being more careful entering new markets.
Certainly. And we've talked about new markets, but you also have entered a select variety of different asset classes, correct? There's senior living, there is comfort homes, there is kid-centric homes. So, Ankur, do you think you could give us a sort of breakdown of the perspective in terms of how did Ashiana choose these asset classes and where the value addition comes into play as a developer? And then we can talk about it from an industry standpoint as well.
So the way we've been positioned for quite a few years is this premium mid-segment player. I think my father, when he started Patna, he basically bought city-centric lands. There, that time there was no apartment living,
Hmm.
and he started in apartment living in, taking these city-centric lands and dividing them into flats, and making it affordable for people to buy.
Hmm.
As we went about more and more and into new locations like Bhiwadi, one of the gaps which happened in 97, 98 was a huge industrial slowdown. And my father and my elder brother decided, why not let's sell to the Delhi market, because we're doing, the pricing is fairly affordable.
Right.
And the buyers who were coming were generally senior citizens looking to be close to Delhi, need for nature, open spaces, and great infrastructure. And we were able to provide that in our housing projects in Bhiwadi. And when Dad saw that senior citizens are coming, and he had studied in the US, where there was a lot of senior living nearby, and he kind of put two and two together and came up with the concept of senior living into India. And this was 97, 98 when he came up with the idea. We did research for 4 years and brought our first project into 2002. So we were there was already a need which we looked at
Hmm.
and kind of captured that into a product which we understood was already available in the Western world.
Right.
For kids centric, it was a very different mindset. What we were basically looking at trends in the marketplace, and there were two trends which we saw which made us go into kid centric homes. One trend was parents were spending, so the premium middle segment was spending a lot more money for the development of their child. At the same time, double income was increasing.
Right.
So there was actually a paradox happening that when you were doing double income, you were making more money, but you were able to spend less time with your children and help develop them where you were ready to spend the money. And that's when we started with a learning a learning hub concept. And a lot of the learning experiences are brought to the project itself, so it's easier for parents to give the right experiences to their child. So it could be from sports activities to extracurricular to tuition classes to math clubs, so different, and also value system drivers. So we drove all of that within the project. So that was the mindset, and it's been very interesting to see how different products are developing, and it's kind of catering to different people's needs.
Right. And I think that brings up a very interesting point that we wanted to ask you as well. Since you and your company have been in Indian real estate for so long and you have innovated with these kind of new concepts like kid centric homes, has the way that developers provide a value add for their properties also started to change with different concepts like this? Because traditionally, there wasn't much stock placed in amenity communities, stuff like that. But is that changing? Is the way you can provide value addition changing?
I think huge amounts of changes can be possible from a value addition perspective. And if you actually, one of the things I learned earlier again is that if you observe consumer behavior on your projects, the kind of learning they bring you is unbelievable. I'll give you a few simple examples. My father used to, when he used to visit projects at lunchtime, he would see all these kids come and the mums wait outside for the buses to come, and it would be scorching hot.
Right.
So just creating a right nice bus stand, figuring out for maids, creating areas for them. Lately, we just saw that the kind of number of cycles we have in our projects, and when kids come to club with their cycles, they don't have places to park their cycles or keep them. So in our newer projects, we've started creating bicycle stands. Simple things like this, and to the fancy stuff of having a gym and a tennis court and squash courts and all of that. So that I think just by observing and seeing consumers in the natural behavior, you learn a lot of things you can do from an amenities perspective at your project. So I think it's creating a lot of value to our consumers.
Right, and sticking with this idea of value addition, what we also thought we could ask you is, have you noticed that certain micro markets lean towards certain value adds against others, and how does one go across sort of like understanding which type of project is suited for which micro market, since you do operate in so many?
There is definitely a few differences in each markets, but I also believe there are certain things we as humans have. You go whichever market. So to me, large green spaces, decent club facilities, maintenance services, well done, very clean construction, are some things which are just, you can go to any market and you'll be like a thing they would like. One of the things we've started doing to understand markets is hire market research companies, and doing a lot of secondary data research for ourselves before we start designing products. So from the flat size to the amenities, they would be very different. So to give you an idea, in a senior living project in Chennai, the fooding side is a very critical part of the services, whereas in the north, we found the activities to be a very, very critical part of the product.
Right.
So when we entered Chennai, we made housekeeping and the fooding as a major piece of our product. And in the north, we keep activities and making lots of different facilities for our seniors as a major part of our product.
Right. And if we were to take a step back, like you were mentioning now, the kind of amenities or the kind of thought process behind developing individual senior living projects. But Ashiana has been a pioneer in senior living in India, and it's a segment that's starting to get investor and consumer interest or visibility, I'd say, more in the last few years. So I wanted to know the thought process behind starting senior living at that time, and what was the thought process in starting this segment at a time where it probably wasn't popular at all in India?
So I think there was two reasons. One, pure passion about giving a great lifestyle for our seniors. That was the underlying want. But there were, okay. So let's put it three things. One, we were always maintaining our project. So we had a natural strength of giving services after delivery. So we were maintaining a project which we delivered 12 years ago in 2000. So that was one of the
Wow.
very early stages. Second, the market in Bhiwadi was asking, we were already getting senior customers from Delhi to come and stay with us. So that the market already existed. Third, we were passionate of creating great lifestyle for them. So when we kind of meshed our strength, the market, and our passion together, senior living was a no-brainer.
Right. And digressing maybe slightly here, but sticking with senior living for a moment, because you touched on something very interesting. You said that you all had traditionally been the managers of your projects, and that leads us to a very important discussion in real estate in India today. One of our previous guests described senior living as a confluence of hospitality and real estate. And since we're talking about senior living, but even extrapolating that in general from Ashiana's perspective, could you tell us a little bit about, in your opinion, where does real estate as a service fall, both as a value addition for consumers but also for, longevity of quality assurance from the builders or the developers' perspective? You talk about ancillary businesses like property management and maintenance services and so on.
So to us, we never started facility management as a business. So the reason we started maintaining our projects in Jamshedpur was my dad had visited one of the older projects which he had delivered 7 8 years ago,
Hmm.
and he felt ashamed to call it an Ashana product because it wasn't well maintained. So it was like a no-brainer, like we need to maintain it,
Right.
and that's how the business kind of started to it, or a service. And from a senior living perspective, I completely agree with that statement. It's real estate, hospitality, and facility management kind of coming together to create great lifestyles for consumer. And I think as you know the people who work in Ashana, now when they buy a house, they find facility management as a big decision maker. So what this basically telling you is that people who start understanding real estate, if you don't have after sales service, it actually depletes value of real estate and quality of life. So what even when I'm looking at my house, is like I'm very clear that I want something which has very good services attached to it, because that is the true fact of improving quality of life.
Right. Right. And you speak sticking with senior living for a moment here. We saw that in a recent report from housing.com, it indicated that over 70% of all dedicated senior living projects are in South Indian cities today. But what we wanted to get your thoughts on are, why do you feel that more companies aren't looking at senior living in a big way in sort of tier one markets, or tier one stroke tier two markets, other all metros like Mumbai and Pune, where there's a huge demand for real estate in general?
So I think that's changing quite quickly. I know of about four developers who have entered the Pune or the Mumbai market. uh, they've done the land purchase, or in the works for a joint venture. We have done a deal already. So I think the western market is actually going to get a lot of supply.
Hmm.
I think the reason we didn't see some is that I think one of the earlier guys had entered senior living, which did not do very well in that market. But I think that is a thing which is going to be changing. South as a market has done very well because of the demographics. Generally, in South India, the number of uh, seniors who live alone are higher, and the per capita generally is higher. So
Hmm.
the economics kind of works in South India. But I would not like a Delhi NCR, a Mumbai, Pune, or Calcutta are big markets which are going to happen.
Right.
Right. And since we are talking about these different markets all over India, another market segment rather I wanted to get your opinion on, Ankur, was affordable housing. And I know that affordable housing is, even though we have a housing for all mission and there's a requirement, there still are the process for affordable housing in India still needs to be ironed out. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think the future for affordable housing is, and do you think that that's a big market in India going forward?
Yes, I think it's a huge market. From an affordability perspective, it's a market which is large, but it's a very difficult market to cater to because of the cost constraints.
Right.
Hmm.
Uh, Look at the way our structure is. Our land costs are very expensive. Construction costs are going up, and to reach out these consumers are difficult. So your marketing costs are not very good. So it becomes a very difficult market to make returns on. So I think the person who's able to crack the code, he's got a huge market waiting for him. But it's a difficult market to enter.
Right.
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 And just as a small follow up to this, we've seen, JVs and also new development models like development mandates and stuff like that becoming a little more popular, especially like in cities like Mumbai where land cost is often a hurdle. So I wanted to ask you that, do you think that this is a viable model for people going forward, this asset light kind of development model?
I guess so. See, I have very limited knowledge of it. Honestly speaking, we don't like margins which are so small. We think it's a very hard to get a project going and delivering, each project is a new product, right, in its own self. And you need a different sales and marketing engine, design engines, delivery engines. So personally, if the margins become too small, they're very difficult to cater to from the energy perspective itself. So for us, we've never found the return energy to the financial side. So that's why we don't do it. I'm sure there are companies who have kind of created a cookie cutter approach on this, and they will be able to do that, and it's a different strength to have. We don't have that strength.
Ankur, one of the things that you mentioned when we last spoke was this interesting case study where you had a sort of an absorption disparity in a city like Jodhpur. Now, you do have experience in a whole variety of cities which cover tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3 maybe, depending on different definitions of the cities. But we wanted to get a sense of where do you feel the place for tier 2 and tier 3 cities fits into the residential real estate story of India, and when do you think the opportune moment for expansion into those markets will be on a large scale?
So for us, our experience when we were smaller, we liked tier three markets because they gave us the volumes we were looking for, and our overheads were not very high because we didn't need the same management bandwidth. But as we've grown in size, we've realized that for tier three, the volume is not good enough for our kind of brand.
Right.
So to us, tier one and tier two makes a lot of sense. How does if we really want to scale into tier three cities, I think from again is this idea of how to do affordable housing. It's the same way how to enter a tier three market where you have to decentralize a lot and make sure you keep it very overhead light,
Right.
because you can't change too much on the land cost and the construction cost. Where you can change is what is the delta you can charge in the market,
Right.
and how do you reduce your overhead. And that's where the thing lies. And I think if you really want to scale up in tier 3, you'll have to figure that out. For us, for the time being, I think our mindsets is getting stronger on tier 1 and tier 2.
Right. Ankur, just as a small follow-up to that, we've seen the concept of townships gaining a little more traction. So do you think that maybe townships and township policy are a way for developers to enter different markets and for it to actually then be viable for them?
But townships are a very difficult product from a perspective. If you look at the number of townships which are successful in the country and the number of townships which have failed, I think there would be more failures than success.
Right.
I personally think with the environmental laws, the way, the fund requirement, the patience capital, the manpower required to do township products requires a different. Again, I think all of this, like if if you consider affordable housing, township, tier three development, these are expertise within the residential space, and each one of us should find our expertise and stick to it. So I think it could be a very profitable venture, but need to know how to execute it and make sure you have the right capital for it, right? Otherwise you will get into trouble.
Right.
Yes, of course.
Ankur, just to take a step back and address maybe a more broader topic, we've been talking today about all these changes we've been seeing in the real estate industry over the last 20 years, and your company has been around for that span of time. So I wanted to ask you, we read that you had done a brand revamp with Ashiana. So I wanted to ask you what the thought process was behind that, and how do development brands that have been around for 15, 20 plus years, maintain that brand identity?
So one of the reasons we changed our brand was actually so my father had 7 partners when he started, and each one of them took the Ashiana brand. And some of us stayed similar in our ethos, the way we did work. But with the growth we were having, we thought we needed the Ashiana brand with a different identity, and talking about the way we are in the past and how we will continue to be in the future. So one of the good things I learned from the brand manager was that a great brand does not talk about where he wants to be, it talks about what it is.
Right.
So we the good thing on the brand revamp was to figure out more and more about ourselves, and the more we figured out, what came out was we are a brand with a lot of passion, transparency, trying to deliver an extraordinary product, and at the end of the day the customer is in the center of it. Okay, so one of the things, if you look at our logo, which is the A, is actually a mother with a child in her arms. And that's our brand representation, that we take care of our stakeholders with a sense of care. With RERA, a lot of people talk about transparency, but I still see lack of transparency. Giving information to our consumers which can impact their buying negatively also upfront. So giving information has become a major part of our thinking, and that's the basically the care side of our brand. We have challenges, but I'm quite proud of it that we've been staying true to the fact of what we revamped to.
Right. I think that's fantastic, Ankur. I think also, I mean, you've touched upon what consumers look at when they look at a brand. And I think when a brand looks at themselves internally and sort of decides where they want to position themselves, there are also other stakeholders who benefit from that. And I wanted to talk to you about another subject, which I think, pun intended, is very close to home for you and for Ashiana, which is real estate companies as good employers. So can you tell us about when brands look at themselves internally, what can real estate companies do internally to become good employers in the sector and improve or create, like you said, more exciting opportunities for young professionals or veterans in the sector?
So when I hear from my sales team, I ask them, why do you work for us, right? So what we've learned is that for our employees also, what stands for the brand as a thing for our consumer also stands true for our employees, with obviously a few tweaks. The biggest thing which comes out is that I don't have to lie to my consumer. I'm never fearing that what I promised is not going to get delivered.
Right.
So I can sleep in peace. So that's one piece which comes out like straight up high up there. Second is this idea of care. They said, I feel like I'm cared for here, not just by the owners, but for each other. I think, one of the things we try hard to make is that I hope you find your best friend at work.
Right.
Third is the idea of learning. We spend a lot of time, money on training our employees. We actually hire about 60-70% of our employees are hired directly from college and made given training programs to grow within the organization.
Okay.
So they appreciate that a lot. And fourth, which I think is this sense of autonomy, which is, you can make a decision and we will back you up. Till the time you follow the golden rule that you can put yourself in other people's shoes and you make decisions, we will back you up and we'll all make mistakes. So I think those are the common threads which come from the way what people enjoy working with us, and I think they're very critical in organizations. And I hope more and more organizations in the real estate industry look at that.
Absolutely. Ankur, there's one follow-up. We've sort of come to the tail end of our conversation, but there's one follow-up that Yash and I were keen to ask you, especially from what you told us about your career overview. And that was, you mentioned two things. One is obviously you mentioned that you went and you studied in NYU, you did your master's in real estate. And then you've also worked in businesses that perhaps have nothing to do with real estate. So other than your startup experience, which gave you sort of managerial exposure to several different aspects of any business that you would operate, is there anything from either your professional degree or from your work ex outside of real estate that you felt has directly translated into your ability to run Ashiana or to scale or grow Ashiana?
I think lots, yeah. It's very difficult. See, the problem with is to, we look at learning as a very direct correlation. So one of the things I realize is that even if it sticks in the back of your mind, certain situations, it helps you work better. So to give you an idea, in Macy's when I was working, I learned the idea of townhouse, where the GM of the store came down and addressed all of us and kind of to taken our questions and gave us some direction, which was very helpful at the time, and it's something we started in our organization.
Right. Right.
In an organization which was a startup, my boss was a very bad boss. He didn't have a care in the thing. And for me, that was another learning, right? Because,
Right.
you can not just learn from the good things. So I remembered always to care for our people, right? So I work hard on the fact that I don't make anybody feel like that.
Yeah.
Uh, so different experiences from a I think a lot of the learning is from a managerial and leadership. From my NYU real estate course, I think I looked at financial numbers and the economics that we are going to be in a business which is cyclical in nature, and how to think through cycles in our industry is going to be important, from how you financially protect yourself. So those are things which you kind of learned in different, and there's many, but you tell me a situation and I'll tell you, hey, during my this time I remember this.
Right. As someone with so much experience now in real estate, I wanted to ask you, in Indian real estate, have there been any trends that kind of surprised you, or maybe stuff that you were expecting to be big that has now started to gain like momentum in Indian real estate?
It's a fully loaded. I'm sure everything would have surprised me if I had predicted real estate. I would have been a much bigger guy. So I'm not a very good predictor of the market. I'm when we buy real estate land, we're actually forever pessimist. We're very bad buyers of land. Everybody who buys land is saying that today we'll buy it, at a price 3,000, will go to 5,000. We're like, it'll stick to 3,000, and then what happens, right? So we let go of great lands without predicting that the market will not go up, and it went up like crazy. And when we thought the market will go up, we bought a land at a peak, and it went down. So I made number of mistakes, even in not even in like, let's say, like, I think in our core business, forget about anything else. And I think that's going to be a part of the business. I don't think that I'm going to get smarter than the market ever. I know I'm not going to get smarter than the market, and I need to make sure that we, as a company, have enough buffer that we survive in good times and in bad times.
Right. I think that's a fantastically well-rounded note to bring this conversation to a close. Ankur, thank you so much for your time and joining us on Concrete Conversations. I think both Yash and I, as well as the audience listening to the episode, will have and will certainly benefit from the insights you've shared with us today.
Thank you so much, guys. This was fun conversation.
Yeah, really enjoyable conversation. Fun for all of us. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow Concrete Conversations on Instagram to know more about upcoming episodes and for some behind the scenes content.
For more deep dives into the world of Indian real estate, stay tuned for more Concrete Conversations.